In the last video, we covered crops that thrive in cool weather. Now we're moving to the crops that won't reach full size unless you start them in February. In the first part of this series, we focused on crops that thrive in cool weather, plants you can grow early outdoors or start with minimal protection. But now we're moving into a different category of vegetables. These are crops that don't forgive late starts. In much of the United States, especially in cooler regions, these plants simply don't have enough time to mature unless you start them in February. Waiting until spring puts you weeks behind. And for some of these crops, that means smaller harvests or no harvest at all. These are long-season vegetables. They need extra time indoors to build strong roots before they ever see the garden. So let's start with the first one, a crop that many gardeners underestimate, even though it depends heavily on timing. Crop number 11 is broccoli. Broccoli is one of the clearest examples of why February timing matters so much. Many gardeners struggle with broccoli. They plant it, it grows leaves, and then instead of forming a nice, tight head, it bolts, flowers, or produces very little. Most of the time, that failure has nothing to do with soil or fertilizer. It comes down to starting too late. Broccoli is a cool season crop with a long growth cycle. From seed to harvest, broccoli can take anywhere from 70 to 100 days, depending on the variety. In much of the United States, especially zones 4 through 7, spring warms up quickly. If broccoli isn't already established when warmer days arrive, the plant becomes stressed. And that stress causes broccoli to bolt, meaning it switches from producing a head to producing flowers. Starting broccoli in February gives it enough time to develop strong roots and sturdy stems before it ever goes outside. In February, broccoli should almost always be started indoors in most parts of the U.S. Use seed trays or small pots filled with loose, well-draining soil. Plant broccoli seeds about 1/4 to 1/2 inch deep. Broccoli does not need extreme heat to germinate. Room temperature is enough, and too much heat can actually weaken seedlings. One of the most important things broccoli seedlings need is light, strong light, early. Without enough light, broccoli seedlings stretch, become thin, and fall over. These weak seedlings never recover fully once transplanted. If you're using grow lights, I keep them just a few inches above the seedlings. If you're using a bright window, rotate trays regularly. The biggest mistake gardeners make with broccoli is waiting until March or April to start seeds. By then, broccoli doesn't have enough time to mature before warm weather hits. Another common mistake is keeping seedlings indoors for too long. Broccoli wants to be transplanted while it's still young and flexible. Old root-bound broccoli seedlings struggle once planted outside. Broccoli can be transplanted outdoors before your last frost date. In fact, broccoli prefers it. Once seedlings are hardened off, they can tolerate light frost and cold nights. Cold weather encourages slow, steady growth, which leads to better head formation later. February started broccoli develops thicker stems, deeper roots, and better resistance to pests. It also produces side shoots after the main head is harvested, extending your harvest window. Crop number 12 is cabbage. Cabbage is one of those crops that quietly punishes late starters. Cabbage looks simple from the outside. You plant it, it grows leaves, and eventually it forms a head. But what most gardeners don't realize is that cabbage needs time. More time than spring usually gives. Cabbage is a cool season vegetable with a long growing cycle. Depending on the variety, cabbage can take 80 to over 110 days to mature. In much of the United States, especially zones 4 through 7, spring warms up fast. If cabbage isn't already established before warm weather arrives, it struggles to form a tight head. Heat stress causes cabbage to grow loose leaves instead of compact heads. Starting cabbage in February gives it the long, cool growing period it needs to develop properly. Cabbage should be started indoors in February in most parts of the U.S. Use seed trays or small pots filled with light, well-draining soil. Plant cabbage seeds about 1/4 inch deep. Cabbage seeds germinate quickly, often within a week, so be ready to provide light early. Strong light is critical for cabbage seedlings. Weak, leggy cabbage seedlings rarely recover. They may survive, but they won't form good heads. Keep grow lights close, or place seedlings in the brightest location possible. One of the most common mistakes gardeners make is keeping cabbage indoors too long. Cabbage prefers cool outdoor conditions. Once hardened off, it should be transplanted outside well before the last frost date. Another mistake is overcrowding. Cabbage needs space to form large, tight heads. February-started cabbage develops thick stems and strong root systems. These plants are more resistant to pests, temperature swings, and stress. When cabbage is started on time, it becomes one of the most reliable crops in the garden. And if cabbage needs patience, the next crop takes that patience even further. Crop number 13, cauliflower. Cauliflower is often considered one of the most difficult vegetables to grow, but cauliflower isn't difficult because it's fragile. It's difficult because it's very sensitive to timing. Cauliflower is extremely sensitive to temperature changes. If cauliflower experiences stress, heat, cold shock, or irregular growth, it responds by forming small, misshapen heads, or none at all. In much of the U.S., cauliflower needs a long, steady, cool growing period. That's only possible if you start it early. February indoor starting gives cauliflower the best chance to mature before heat arrives. Cauliflower should be started indoors in February using shallow trays or small pots. Plant seeds about a quarter-inch deep in loose, well-draining soil. Keep temperatures moderate, not too warm, not too cold. Cauliflower seedlings need consistent conditions. Too much heat causes weak growth. Too little light causes stretching. Aim for slow, steady development rather than fast growth. The most common mistake with cauliflower is uneven care. Inconsistent watering, temperature swings, or late transplanting all led to failure. Another mistake is waiting too long to transplant outdoors. Cauliflower prefers cool air and steady conditions. February-started cauliflower forms stronger root systems and more uniform heads. Early planting also helps cauliflower avoid pests that become active later in the season. When cauliflower is started on time, it becomes predictable, not difficult. And now we're moving into crops that demand the longest growing season of all, the ones that absolutely punish late starters. Crop number 14 is Brussels sprouts. This is the crop that tests patience more than any other. Brussels sprouts aren't hard because they're delicate. They're hard because they take a very long time to grow. If you don't start Brussels sprouts early, you're almost guaranteed disappointment, especially in most parts of the United States. Brussels sprouts can take anywhere from 90 to 130 days to mature. That means if you start them late, they simply run out of time. In zones 4 through 7, summer heat arrives quickly, and fall cold arrives sooner than expected. Brussels sprouts need a long, steady growing season so they can mature slowly and form tight sprouts along the stem. Starting them in February is not optional. It's necessary. Brussels sprouts should always be started indoors in February. Use deep seed trays or small pots because Brussels sprouts develop strong root systems early. Plant seeds about a quarter to half an inch deep in loose, well-draining soil. Brussels sprout seedlings need strong light from the very beginning. Weak seedlings never catch up later. Keep grow lights close, provide good airflow, and avoid excessive heat. Slow, sturdy growth now leads to better sprout development later. The most common mistake gardeners make is starting Brussels sprouts too late. Another mistake is pulling plants early in frustration. Brussels sprouts often look unimpressive for months, until suddenly they aren't. February-started Brussels sprouts mature during cooler fall weather. Cool temperatures improve sprout flavor and firmness. When started on time, Brussels sprouts reward patience better than almost any other vegetable. And now we're moving to a crop that almost every gardener grows, but very few start at the right time. Crop number 15 is tomatoes, and tomatoes are where many gardeners misunderstand February. Some people start tomatoes too early, others start them too late. The key is starting them at the right moment. And for many U.S. gardeners, that moment is February. Tomatoes are warm season plants, but they need a long growing period. In cooler parts of the U.S., waiting until March or April to start tomatoes often leads to smaller plants and delayed harvests. February starts give tomatoes time to develop strong stems and root systems before transplanting. Tomatoes should be started indoors in February using seed trays or small pots. Plant seeds about a quarter-inch deep in moist, well-draining soil. Tomatoes like warmth to germinate, but once they sprout, they need light more than heat. Tomato seedlings stretch quickly without enough light. Leggy tomato plants are weak tomato plants. Keep lights close, provide gentle airflow, and avoid overwatering. The biggest mistake is starting tomatoes early without enough light. Another mistake is letting plants become root-bound indoors. Tomatoes grow fast. They need space and timely transplanting. February started tomatoes often flower earlier, set fruit sooner, and produce longer. They also recover from transplant shock more easily. When tomatoes are started correctly, they carry that strength all season, and the final two crops are ones that absolutely punish late starts, especially in cooler U.S. climates. Crop number 16 is peppers. Peppers are one of the slowest vegetables you can grow. This is where many gardeners make a critical mistake. They assume peppers behave like tomatoes, but peppers are very different. Peppers need more time, more warmth, and more patience than almost any other common garden crop. From seed to harvest, peppers can take anywhere from 120 to 160 days. In much of the United States, especially zones 4 through 7, the outdoor growing season simply isn't long enough unless peppers get a strong indoor head start. Waiting until March or April to start peppers often means small plants and late harvests. Peppers should always be started indoors in February. Use seed trays or small pots with loose, well-draining soil. Plant seeds about a quarter-inch deep and keep the soil warm. Peppers germinate slowly. A heat mat can help, but once seedlings emerge, light becomes more important than heat. Pepper seedlings grow slowly at first. This is normal. Don't overwater, don't overfeed, and don't panic. Strong light and steady conditions matter more than speed. One of the biggest mistakes gardeners make is giving up too soon. Another mistake is keeping peppers too cold after germination. Cold peppers stall. Warm, well-lit peppers thrive. February started peppers flower earlier and set fruit sooner. They also have time to recover from transplant shock and grow into productive plants. Late-started peppers often never reach their full potential. And the final crop on this list is one that combines everything we've talked about so far. Long season, heat-loving, and completely unforgiving of late starts. Crop number 17 is eggplant, and eggplant demands respect. Eggplant looks sturdy once it's established, but getting it to that point takes time. Eggplant has one of the longest growing seasons of any vegetable commonly grown in home gardens. In cooler U.S. climates, eggplant must be started early or it simply won't mature before fall. February indoor starts give eggplant enough time to develop strong roots and thick stems. Eggplant seeds should be started indoors using small pots or deep trays. Plant seeds about a quarter-inch deep and keep soil warm during germination. Eggplant prefers warmth even more than peppers. Eggplant seedlings grow slowly at first, then suddenly accelerate. Strong light, warm temperatures, and consistent moisture are key. Avoid stress early. Stressed eggplants never fully recover. The most common mistake gardeners make is starting eggplant too late. Another mistake is transplanting outdoors too early before nights are warm enough. Eggplant hates cold soil. February started eggplants produce earlier, larger, and more consistent harvests. They also handle summer heat better because they're already established. If you've made it this far, you now understand something most gardeners don't. Timing matters just as much as soil and sunlight. February isn't about rushing the season, it's about preparing for it. If this video helped you plan your garden more confidently, take a moment to like it. It helps this channel reach more gardeners who want realistic, practical advice. And if you want planting guides that actually match real U.S. weather, subscribe to Daily Plant Life. Gardening gets easier when you start at the right time. I'll see you in the next one.